What is going on, gunfighters? Saddle up for another episode of Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about gunfighting the right way, with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. First and foremost, I am a Christian, a servant of God, and a follower of Jesus Christ. God has blessed me to do many things in my life, for I could do nothing apart from Him. U.S. Marine Corps combat veteran, did a couple of tours in Iraq. As an assaultman after my combat tours, I was an urban warfare instructor for the Marine Corps under Mojave Viper. Also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. Also did several years in law enforcement, LAPD. I worked regular assignments and more specialized assignments. Been a private contractor for a 3-letter government agency. That's all I'll say about that. Been blessed to be a state rifle and pistol champion and West Coast regional rifle champion. Won more shooting competitions with the talent that God's given me than I can actually remember. Was blessed to be the commander of a tactical team in a large metropolitan area. Our primary job, the reason we primarily existed, was to stop active shooters. I got the opportunity to head up and be the commander of that team. I grew up around guns, hunting and shooting and competing at a very early age. Been blessed to hunt all over this beautiful country, from whitetail on the East Coast to mule deer on the West Coast, and bear and elk and all manner of things. I've even been a professional big game hunter and guide. But again, most importantly, I'm a Christian. And I am your host, Michael Milito. Welcome to Gunfighter Life. Going on, gunfighters. Today, we're going to talk about what I think is a common fallacy in the gunfighting world. Banned must be better. Banned is better. It must be better. That's why they banned it. Now, I don't want to be misconstrued here. I don't want you to get the wrong idea. I am for shall not be infringed means shall not be infringed. I'm not for any of this stuff being banned. I'm not in favor of that. I'm just dealing with the facts that some things are banned. And because some things are banned, people think that they are somehow better. Let me start with a big one. Full auto. This is coming from a guy. You heard the bio. I put that in this episode for a reason. I've been leaving it out of many. But as you might surmise, I have some familiarity with full auto. I'm familiar with full auto. I'm familiar in full auto both in like a full auto M4 with 3-round burst during the war, doing contracting stuff with all manner of machine guns. Here's the deal about full auto and machine guns. They're really mostly effective if they're mounted on a tripod or a bipod with a team. Right? That's why the U.S. military employs them that way. Like a medium machine gun, a 240. That's a heavy pig. Plus the ammo. You have a gunner, you have an assistant gunner. A lot of times a 3-man team. One guy carries extra barrels and ammo, another guy carries extra barrels and ammo, and then you have your gunner. And those can be quite effective when fired from the prone off a bipod. Or even better, on a vehicle mount, on a whatever they call it, rack and pinion mount. I forget the actual name of that mount, but when fired from a vehicle, yeah, they can be quite effective. An M2, a Ma Deuce, yeah, mounted on a fixed position can be quite effective. But you're talking shoulder-fired weapons, like for the average person, very ineffective. I mentioned more specialized assignments. I had access to armories with all kinds of stuff. All kinds of stuff. Full auto, AR-15 variants, the CAR 15, things like that. All manner of those things. Submachine guns I can't even remember the name of. Literal Tommy guns. Thompson submachine guns. Had access to those, could take them out and shoot them, and I often did. Here's the thing. For fun. As far as practical use goes, no. I had a 3-round burst M16A2 during the first deployment and an A4 during the second time going to war. I fired that thing on 3-round burst exactly 0 times. I know as an infantry Marine, I know of exactly 0 firsthand other Marines that fired their weapon and burst, other than for fun, other than just to do it. But as far as combat effectiveness, really, it's not better. So don't think that it's better just because it's banned. Because it's banned, it must be more effective. If you are doing any kind of dynamic movement, fighting with an AR-15 or most shoulder-fired weapons, the most effective thing to do is well-aimed semi-automatic fire. I'm not saying there's never a time for full auto. I'm not saying you shouldn't be allowed to have full auto. Again, I think shall not be infringed. But the case to use full auto is very, very few and far between. Like you just happen to pop up over an enemy trench and there's just a line of Nazis taken off guard, then yeah, maybe there's a case for full auto. But can you think of a time, honestly, when that applies to most people? Again, I never saw it in war. I'm not saying it never happened in the entire 20 years of GWAT, but the vast majority of the time, you fired your gun in semi-auto. And I don't know of any other Marines that fired them in full auto or burst, other than actual machine guns, like medium to heavy machine guns, the way they were intended. Even a Mark 19 machine gun grenade launcher. But they're big, big weapons, designed as crew-serve weapons, with doctrine and supporting team members. So full auto is very, very limited in its actual effectiveness. I'm not saying it's not fun. I'm not going to pretend like it's not a lot of fun. But as far as real-world effectiveness, being effective, you're not missing out on much. And 3-round burst is even less so. I honestly believe if you offered me, right now you said you could have it and we'll pay the tax stamp and everything, and you can't resell it, so it's not something that's worth like 15 or 20 grand. But you could have with a really good trigger, match grade trigger AR, like let's say a Daniel Defense, just because they're a commonly known one, and safe semi with a really good like Timney trigger. Or you could have a 3-round burst with that garbage 3-round burst trigger. Because if you don't know, there's 3 different sears, so you get 3 different trigger pulls as those things wear in. You could have that, or you could have an M16 with safe semi 3-round burst. Even a Daniel Defense one. I would take the regular safe semi with a good trigger. Because even in semi-auto, those 3-round burst triggers are pretty atrocious. And the 99% of the time that you're actually going to need to use that thing, I don't want it in 3-round burst. And the fact that it makes the trigger pull awful every other time, it's not better. So don't think that it's better just because it's banned. I guess that's a big fallacy. Another one, sadly, in some states in the Union, let's just say their definition of shall not be infringed is rather different than my definition of shall not be infringed. And people that live in these states, like Maryland, Massachusetts, California, they can't really have normal ARs. They have these neutered kind of abomination ARs. But they think that the AR is the best all the time because they can't have it. It must be the best. When for their application, they may be perfectly as good or better, let's say with a truck gun, with something else. In the first place, even if they could have an AR. An AR is not always the best answer. So they go through all this rigmarole trying to get some abomination that's technically legal, that's an AR in name only. Maybe it shares a bolt carrier group. And you end up with this abomination is the best word I can think of, with some crazy, not ergonomic stock with some bullet button or whatever fiasco that you've done. When even if you could have a regular AR, maybe that's not the best choice. Maybe for you, a Mini 14 is just as good or better. Going back to my more specialized assignments, when I worked police assignments, one of the things we had in the armory was a Mini 14s. We had Mini 14s. And I had access to full auto Car 15, and I'm not going to lie, when I was doing some more specialized stuff, I really liked that gun. But sometimes I just liked the Mini 14. For average stuff, for a lot of stuff, it was just as good or better. They point well. They're good guns. There's nothing wrong with a Mini 14. At what point, just because it's banned, would you just say, I'm better off with just a straight out of the box Mini 14 than some abomination Franken AR that is an AR in name only? And I think that it's better because it's still I still consider it an AR, even though it's not really what it was intended to be, just because it's working around a band. That must be better. When you'd probably be better off, even if you could have both in a lot of situations. Like, it's called the ranch rifle for a reason. If you're driving around on a quad, on a ranch, on a farm, that Mini 14 is a good gun. It's a good gun for that. It's the ranch rifle. You may have been better off with that in the first place. You want a good, solid truck gun in one of those states. I'm not saying it's always better. I'm not saying you shouldn't be able to own an AR-15. Again, I'm not condoning those rules. I'm just saying it is what it is. But might you be better off in the first place with just a 30-30 lever action? Right, like a Marlin 336 with a good LPVO mounted on top. That's a good intermediate cartridge, 30-30. Yeah, it's a lever action, but it's got a decent rate of fire. And it's got a lot more round-for-round effectiveness than an AR. And if you're limited to, I think 10 rounds is most common, but there's maybe some states with even less. If you're limited to 10 rounds, right, 10 rounds of 30-30, round for round, is more effective than 10 rounds of 5.56, 2.23, despite what, politicians might think. That's not a super powerful round. It's a prairie dog round. It's a varmint round. You could have a 30-30 lever action. Again, Marlin 336 with an LPVO mounted on top. And that might be better anyway. That might be a better gun anyway than the AR. If your philosophy of use, again, I'm not saying you shouldn't have an AR, but if it's for a truck gun, right, why not? And here's my go-to truck on my long gun that's in the truck right now. A Mossberg 590S. It shoots the short shells. It'll hold 13 rounds. And I'm not aware of any state that bans not detachable magazines. It's an internal tube magazine, so I don't think those rules apply even in those states. And if they do, they often only apply, like in California, to centerfire rifles. Well, the shotgun is a far more effective tool for most things anyway. Look at the round-per-round effectiveness of double-aught buck or triple-aught buck or number 4 buck. Take your pick. Pick your flavor. Or like a deep penetrator slug for a truck gun, right? I think that's a better choice anyway. I could have any gun I want. I'm in northern Idaho, kind of a bastion of freedom for Second Amendment stuff. And in the back of my truck is a Mossberg 590S, loaded with buckshot. And I have an SBR AR. And it's not a bad truck gun, but I think all in all, that shotgun is a better choice. That's my one go-to long gun. If I'm like that classic scenario, you got to pick one gun and head for the hills. It's going to be the Mossberg 590S. For reasons I've gone over before, but if it comes to defense and feeding myself for a good all-around gun for taking anything from a mourning dove to defending against a grizzly bear, and we have both of those here. It's just a more practical choice than an AR. Even if I can have both, that shotgun is a better choice. And for you, you might decide, even if you could have any AR that you want, it's not always the best tool. And there's nothing wrong with ARs. They're a good choice for a lot of things, but not everything. So don't have that fallacy in your mind that just because it's banned, it must be better. You're likely better off with a truck gun, with a shotgun anyway. Spend all this money tricking out a quasi-abomination AR that's going to cost you thousands of dollars to roll around in the back of your truck when you could get, a Maverick 88 for, I don't know what they cost with inflation now, but far less. A fraction of the Contraband. If we're comparing like kind of inflation-proof stuff, if that AR is going to cost you one gold Contraband, that Mossberg 590, even fully loaded with a bunch of ammo, is going to cost you 1/10 of that Contraband, and be a better choice, a more practical choice. Because this is gunfighter life. This is not tactical Barbie life. This is not Instagram, check out my cool Cerakote job life. This is gunfighter life. I've used this analogy, but I'll use it again. When I was a police officer and I was doing more specialized stuff, and I had access to all kinds of things. One of the most common things that I would take, if I was literally going to kick down doors to go in a house where there might be somebody in there trying to kill me and make it out breathing on the other side, out of all those things, I would often take a Remington 870 with buckshot and slugs. Why? Because, Instagram didn't even exist then. But I didn't care what looked cool on Instagram. I didn't care that it wasn't as cool as a Daniel Defense AR-15 with Cerakote and a Let It Rain dust cover, right? It was the most logical choice to keep me breathing. because a gun like that just jumps to the shoulder like it belongs there, like it's got a rare earth magnet attached to it to my shoulder, and it just jumps up in there, and I can deliver devastating payload of double-aught buck. That's more important to me than how cool it looks, right? It's a good, effective weapon. You might be better off with that anyway, and especially in most defensive ranges. And I've submitted this challenge before, and I think you should be able to own whatever you want. If you want a Ruger precision rifle, if you want a Savage rifle and 338 Lapua and a 25 magnification scope, I think you should be able to have it, and I think you should go out and have fun with it and run it. But when was the last, and I'm not saying it would never happen in some kind of scenario, but when was the last legitimate use of deadly force by a civilian past 150 yards? Can you think of any? Inside 150 yards, if you sighted in and properly patterned and sighted in your shotgun with decent sights, with slugs, you should be able to get that done. And if you can't, it's probably not the gun, it's probably your marksmanship. 150 yards. And the shotgun is absolutely a devastating tool, and it's super flexible. And I don't want to turn this into how awesome the shotgun is, but in many choices, in many situations, it's a better choice than that AR that's banned, especially if you're dealing with some kind of quasi-bullet button, 10-round, non-detachable magazine, non-pistol grip, non-flash hider. Again, abomination. Why even go down that road? If you want to stick with 223 box magazine, can you get a Mini 14 ranch rifle? Can you get a Keltec SU-16? You might like better anyway if it's like a bug-out bag gun, because those things are super lightweight. You can't dump full auto sustained fire, but you can't really do that. That's not really practical for most things, as we aforementioned anyway. So again, don't think that because it's banned, it's necessarily better. Let me talk about another one. And again, I don't think these should be infringed upon. But suppressors. I'm familiar with suppressors. Here's the thing. I don't think they're worth it 99% of the time. Let's talk about one on a handgun. Okay, so I put a suppressor on a handgun. It doesn't handle anymore like a handgun, right? The entire reason for me carrying a handgun most of the time is because it's the gun that I can have on me. It's already a compromise. It's not as effective as a rifle or a shotgun. I have a handgun because I can have it on me, because it's compact, concealable, carryable. Well, it's not those things if I put a suppressor on it, right? You're not walking around with a handgun with a suppressor on it, right? You get your, whatever, Beretta 92, which is a great gun, or your Glock 17 and put a suppressor on it. Then what are you doing? How are you carrying that thing? You're probably not carrying it walking around in whatever kind of holster with a suppressor on it. If the suppressor's off of it, in what kind of, again, practical scenario are you going to say, hold on, let me screw on the suppressor? I know it's time to gunfight, but give me 3 to 5 minutes and I'll be ready. It doesn't work like that. You might say, well, it's good to practice quietly, but not really, because your natural point of aim, your grip, your stance, all that stuff's going to be affected by the weight of that suppressor on the end of the gun. And I know they make, again, I'm familiar with suppressors. I know they make lightweight titanium suppressors and all that, but it still throws off the balance of the gun. So then, are you really getting good reps in, or are you getting garbage reps in? Because practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And I'm not saying there's never a time and you shouldn't be able to have a suppressor, but don't think that because they're banned, there's some kind of special thing that's going to make you better. Not that long ago, I had a job managing a firearms and training company that was a Class 3 dealer. I could have ordered all kinds of that stuff. I bought exactly 0 of them. I don't care. I'm not saying you shouldn't be able to have them if you want them, but I don't want one. They don't do anything for me. And I know they're popular for hunting, and I love to hunt. Been a professional big game hunter and guide. But here's the thing. They're heavy. Again, they make the gun longer. They handle, in my opinion, far poorly. I could cut the barrel down, but then I'm giving up velocity for something a little bit quieter. And I could spend $200 on a tack stamp plus a suppressor. Or here's the thing. I could buy a set of Walker Bluetooth wireless noise-enhancing headphones for right around $200. The cost of the tack stamp, let alone the suppressor. And they're better in almost every way. They go in my ear. They're far lighter and smaller than a suppressor. I can turn them all the way up so I can hear as good or better than I can with my regular ears. And if I shoot, they cancel out the noise.
And they're going to be even quieter and better than if I had a suppressor on a supersonic rifle round anyway. Again, just because the suppressor is banned doesn't make it better. In my opinion, those Walker inside the ear Bluetooth noise canceling headphones are better in just about every single way. If I'm out hunting, or if it's for hunting. Am I going to trudge around this giant suppressor on the end of a gun other than maybe it's cool? But if it's for the quiet factor, why don't I just put in the noise amplifying, noise canceling ear things in my ear? They're small, far lighter, small, far handier. The ones that I have last for hours and hours and hours, and they recharge in the case, unless I'm going on like a several month-long hunt in the backcountry, which I've never done. I've gone on pretty long hunts, but not that long. And if I'm doing that, I probably don't want to lug around the suppressor anyway. You get the point. Just because it's banned doesn't make it better. It might be kind of nice sometimes to have a suppressor on the end of my 22 rifle for hunting small game. And not even to do it in some kind of nefarious way where I'm not allowed to hunt the game, but just so I don't spook other game, or if I'm doing it where it's legal, but it's still kind of close to suburbia and I don't want to bother people. It will be kind of nice for that. But here's the thing. I can just get a 22 lever action or bolt action and load it with 22 shorts or 22 calibres or CB caps. And pretty much do the same thing. And I don't have to worry about the suppressor. I don't have to worry about the tax stamp. I don't have to worry about the paperwork. I don't have to pay the $200 for the buy your leave permission to have it. And it's a lighter, handier carbine. For the price of even a good, and I like the Sparrow, it's a good 22 can, but for the price of that Sparrow, which is a pretty inexpensive 22 suppressor, and the cost of the tax stamp, I could buy a really nice bolt action, long barrel, which is going to make it even quieter, 22 bolt action rifle and shoot CB caps or calibres through it, and it'll be as quiet or quieter than a 22 long rifle with a suppressor. So again, just because it's banned doesn't make it better. And again, I don't want you to misconstrue this. Again, I think shall not be infringed means shall not be infringed. But I'm telling you that just because something is banned doesn't mean that it would be better for your situation simply because it's banned. Banned just means banned. That doesn't mean that it's better or somehow advantageous to your situation. Think critically. Don't think with all the FOMO, the fear of missing out. Look at it circumspectly, wisely, with logic and reason. Anyway, that's kind of the point that I wanted to get across today. Luckily, I could think of many other examples, but you get the idea there. Here's an example. I was a law enforcement officer, LAPD, worked in California. I'm fairly familiar with California law. They do exist. They are kind of unicorns, but they do exist. You can get a concealed carry permit for California, and you could legally carry a handgun. However, in California, nunchucks are a felony. That's right. The magistrates in California, per their laws and their statutes, nunchucks are a felony. Are you going to say, well, they're a felony, they must be better. I wish I could carry nunchucks rather than a 1911. They're a felony. They must be better. No, they're just banned. That doesn't make it better for anything. So just think about that when maybe a little bit of that FOMO starts reaching down and kind of manipulating your thought process. Be free of that. Be free of the FOMO in life, but this pertaining to this in gunfighter life. With that, the tactical tip of the day. Talking about NPEs, non-permissive environments, where just about everything is banned. The airport. What is a man to do going to the airport? Well, here's one thing that I have had it for like 15 years. A stainless steel water bottle. And I tied a length of 550 cord on it to make a handle. I'm making air quotes there. A handle. That's fairly lengthy. It makes it easier for me to carry. And if you think about physics, if I fill that with water once I get through the checkpoint, so I don't have terrorist water and I have the airport water, once I do that, that thing's pretty heavy. And one could, if one was so inclined, swing that thing pretty hard. It's just a stainless steel water bottle. Think outside the box. That's my tactical tip for you today on that. Tactical verse of the day. No matter what the weapon is, and you should be well versed in weapons, I think, as a man, be able to provide and protect. But the battle is the Lord's. The battle is the Lord's. Reminds me of David right before he slays Goliath and cuts his head off with his own sword. From 1 Samuel, "This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you and take your head from you. And this day I will give the carcasses of the camp of the Philistines to the birds of the air and the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. Then all this assembly shall know that the Lord does not save with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands." Whew, that was so good. I got another one I want to read. How about Deuteronomy 20? "When you go out to battle against your enemies and see horses and chariots and people more numerous than you, do not be afraid of them, for the Lord your God is with you, who brought you up from the land of Egypt. So it shall be when you are on the verge of battle, that the priest shall approach and speak to the people. And he shall say to them, Hear, O Israel, today you are on the verge of battle with your enemies. Do not let your heart faint. Do not be afraid, and do not tremble or be terrified because of them. For the Lord your God is he who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies, to save you." Men, be strong, be courageous, be a man of God. Thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.